What's up, everybody? Welcome to another 60 feet 6 inches, your fantasy baseball home over at fakepigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You can follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. Once again, Ben Rolfe. What's up, Ben?
Not much, Kyle. It's. I've missed you, man. You were in Vegas for your bachelor party, and we missed out on our chance to talk starting pitchers. So we had a draft the week before that messed with recording. My baby refuses to sleep, so I can't stay up past 7:30, which makes recording very difficult when you're on the west coast of America and I'm in the UK. It leaves us a very short window in which we can record.
It's all about threading that needle, Ben. I'm alive, so that's good. I survived, so that's good. But yeah, I'm happy to be back. And Ben, we're talking about fantasy baseball week 1. Basically, people are finishing up their drafts this week. We'll have opening day on Thursday. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, it seems to come around quicker every year, but I feel like that's just what you say every year with everything. I think we say with football, like, oh, draft season just finished so quick and all of this kind of stuff. Realistically, I don't think there's anything crazy. The weirdest thing is we're going to have this 11-day first kind of week, which, depending on how you handle it in your fantasy settings, could lead to a really short 4-day week or could lead to a really long 11-day week. And we're going to talk about the effect that has on both hitting and pitching later. But it's going to be an interesting first week. I'm quite looking forward to Thursday. So my wife is out Thursday night for the first time since we had the baby. She is going out on her own and leaving me with the baby. So I will be finding every excuse I can to watch some baseball while the baby sleeps.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see if we can record a podcast for week 2 after you being left alone with the baby. But we'll see. As long as you survive and advance, we'll be good. Obviously the extra long week 1 does throw a little wrinkle. Do you find yourself kind of avoiding, those streamers, those 2-star guys, or do you think it's still there's still opportunities? Obviously, we'll talk some of our favorite names if you're looking to stream, or if you're a little thin at pitching. We'll talk about some injuries, obviously, here in a little bit. Some big news going down, but kind of general philosophy for the first week of the season.
Right now, it's very hard to kind of do much because I'm just looking at the schedule and all the teams except for Minnesota and Seattle play 9, 10 or 11 games. Minnesota and Seattle play 8 games each, which is going to be different for them. But what that means is that most teams their best 3 or 4 pitchers are going to pitch twice. And in some cases, the whole rotation is going to go through twice, you would think. I'm interested to see what Tampa Bay do, because they're talking of this 4-man rotation, but they've got 5 games on the bounce to start the season. So that'll be really fun to see what they do on the 5th day. It's very hard. A lot of rotations aren't set right now. There's a lot of things up in the air. We're not even really 100% when names like Zack Greinke are going to pitch. We think it might be in those first 3 days, but are we going to see a situation where maybe someone like Greinke gets skipped they just to get him a bit more rest if they've got 4 other healthy arms and only 9 games? Are they going to work it that way? It's very hard to go chasing too much. So my philosophy this week is very much going to be, unless there's an injury concern, start my studs and just roll with it, really. And if I play in daily leagues, it's a bit different because you can react as the news comes in. But in weekly leagues, it is just going to be a case of set my studs. If I lose this week, I lose. In roto leagues, the first week is not huge for you. It obviously matters, but it's not huge. And if I lose this week in a head-to-head, I'm just gonna sign and get on with it, frankly.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And also, it just in general, these teams, some teams are going 4-man, some teams are going 6-man rotations, so it's going to throw numbers off a little bit, but it will be interesting. One of the big news points that we didn't get a chance to hit on, I just wanted to get your quick thoughts. Alex Cobb, he signed a deal. He's going to be with the Baltimore Orioles. I guess in 4 years, $60-70 million almost. What are your thoughts on Cobb? I know he was kind of in that Lance Lynn, Jake Arrieta group, and kind of the last shoe to fall, as they say. Do you think he can be useful in Baltimore, or does this landing spot kind of make you scratch your head a little bit?
Landing in Baltimore does concern me for him. If I was really hoping actually that the Angels were going to find a way to work him into in for this year because they really need someone like him to anchor a rotation with all those stud hitters. Unfortunately, being in Baltimore does limit his upside because I think it's a great hitter's park, and I think that's quite accepted that it generally works well for hitters there. Let's be honest, we'd be happy if he gave us what he gave us at the Rays last year with a sort of 3.5 ERA, and I don't see the strikeouts getting much over 7. So for me, he's limited at a kind of starting pitcher 60, and if I'm in a starts cap league or I'm in a innings cap league, he's probably even lower than that for me because he's going to be such a negative on an innings basis, and I don't see in Baltimore where the upside is with the ratios. That's my problem. So it's not as if there's great strikeouts. It's not as if there's going to be great ERA. I really struggle with him. I don't even know if I'd take him over the upside of like the Dylan Bundys and the Kevin Gosmans in Baltimore at the moment. I've ranked him pretty much dead in between. So my rankings go Bundy, Corbin, Cobb, Kevin Gausman, just because I'm sick of ranking Gausman. He just drives me nuts. I feel like he's one of the most overrated people. I feel like all of them in Baltimore are so overrated. They just almost need to do a Jake Arrieta and escape to be good.
Yeah, well, Jake Arrieta did, and it obviously worked. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on Cobb. I don't see a ton there. There will obviously be times where he'll have good opportunities, but he's gonna be a pick and choose matchup streaming type option at best for me. A guy that the ERA like a mid 3s would be great. It'll probably be closer to 4. 7 strikeouts per 9. Like if things go well, I don't know. There's not a lot to get excited about there for me. Let's talk more pitching because my San Francisco Giants, if you see that flaming cloud of smoke off in the distance, that's just the Giants. They've completely imploded. Madison Bumgarner, 1 week before the season, takes a liner off his pitching hand. It is now fractured. He's out probably 2 months, and then he'll have to do some rehab. So 2.5 months before we even see him back on the mound, maybe 3 months, which is fantastic. I really wanted the Giants season to be over before it even started, and it seems like we're headed that way. And then and his teammate Jeff Samardzija, strained pectoral, out a month. Ben, I guess let's start with Bumgarner. I guess if you already drafted, you just kind of got to suck it up for a month, right? Or 2 months or 3 months or whatever it takes to get back.
Yeah, the good thing with Bumgarner is when he returns, I expect the per game basis to be so good that it's going to be all right. Honestly, I think if you're in a starts cap league and the waiver wire is thin, I would try and get like a reliever along the lines of if Dylan Betances is available and AJ Minter. I would just try and get some good ratios out of relief pitchers if you can. If you don't have to fill starting pitcher spots and you can just go, I think I would just go for good ratios because I think Bumgarner 2 months, it'll be interesting to see because your throwing hand is horrible. God, he's the king of freak injuries, isn't he, at the moment? Yeah. I mean, falling off a dirt bike, there's stupidity there. I don't think I was very nice about him for that last year, but at the end of the day, he's a 28-year-old. In my head, he's like 40, Madison Bumgarner. Like, in my head, he's just been there forever. He's like a 40-year-old man, and you think a 40-year-old man should know better than to ride a dirt bike. And then I remember he's 28, and I'd go out and ride a dirt bike if someone gave me that option, and I'm 26. So, and I should probably know better too. With Madison Bumgarner, I'm kind of going to rank him about the same way. I'm going to treat him the same way I treat Rich Hill.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like Rich Hill, James Paxton, where they're going to be guys that when they're pitching, they're going to be so good that it's going to be worth kind of dealing with the bumps and bruises along the way.
Yeah, if you're drafting tomorrow, do you really think a full season of Sonny Gray, David Price, John Lester, and Masahiro Tanaka is going to be significantly better than half a season of Madison or let's say 2/3 of a season of Madison Bumgarner and whatever you get at replacement level? I really don't. So I'm dropping him down to 20-ish. Like, it would be really tough between. So I struggled with whether to rank Rich Hill above Jose Quintana and Gerrit Cole or not. And in the end, I did because I just like what he can do on a per innings per game basis, and that's how I feel with Bumgarner. Like, he sits right in that group with Carlos Martinez. Is kind of, this almost is a tier within a tier. So you've got Keuchel, Carrasco. Well, Carrasco's had his own problem, but he seems to be okay. Severino and Martinez seem to be kind of the guys you can trust to give you 150 plus innings. Then you get your Paxtons, your Robbie Rays, your Aaron Nolas, your Rich Hills, and And those guys, I all think they're going to give you 150 good innings. And
Hmm.
if one of them can give you 200 innings, it's going to be amazing. And that's where Bumgarner sits, because I feel like those group could be as good as Bumgarner is on a normal basis if they were to give you 200 innings. So why would I drop Bumgarner any lower than those injury prone guys? Because I see when he comes back that barring a freak injury, that he will be himself. And I'm not going to, yeah, you get the point I'm trying to make here, is that he is worth a DL stash. It's such a shame. I wrote a DL stash article on Friday, and by the time it kind of posted, about 3 hours later, Bumgarner hurt himself.
Yeah. If you're doing a draft this weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's still a few days. Um, is he now go from maybe a borderline second, third to fifth, sixth? Fourth? Were you interested in him in the fourth? How early are you comfortable? I mean, let me throw out a couple names and just tell me who you'd rather have. So, Bumgarner or Carlos Martinez?
I'd rather have Martinez.
Bumgarner or Chris Archer?
I'm high on Archer. I'd rather have Archer.
Okay, let's drop a little bit. Let's go like top 75 overall. So James Paxton or Madison Bumgarner?
This, this is where it gets tough. I think I trust that Paxton can do enough innings to be slightly better, but this is the range we're talking. The Paxton, Robbie Ray, Aaron Nola range. Any of those guys, so what do you say? They fall about 75th overall to 100th
Yes.
overall?
Yeah, so they're about top 20, 25 pitcher, top 75, top 100 players. So let me ask you, if you're sitting on the clock and say the sixth, seventh round Bumgarner's there, and you could take either Bumgarner or Otani, which one are you taking?
Bumgarner.
Bumgarner or Tanaka?
Oh, it would be Bumgarner.
Bumgarner or Jake Arrieta?
Um, Probably Arietta, because I just think he is capable of doing the 200 innings season, and I think that is so valuable, even if his ratios are not going to be as good as what Bumgarner can do. Like I say, what I would probably do is, at the moment, I would probably draft Rich Hill first. But what I would look to do is I would look to try and package Rich Hill and something for Bumgarner and something if Rich Hill is healthy 2 months into the season,
Yeah.
and is pitching well. Because then what I think you're doing is, if you use Rich Hill, and if someone buys into the fact that Rich Hill's been healthy for 2 months and they think he's going to be healthy for the rest of the season, then one, they've lost their marbles, but two, you might be able to get Bumgarner on a slight discount then. And what you might get is the best of both worlds. You imagine flipping Rich Hill for Madison Bumgarner at 2 months into the season, getting
Yeah.
2 months of Rich Hill at his best, and then 3 or 4 months of Madison Bumgarner at his best. You've essentially just drafted a top 5 overall pitcher there. So that's a strategy I'm going to try. I own Rich Hill in a lot of places, and I'm going to be targeting the Madison Bumgarner owner to see if especially if they need pitching help. I'm going to be saying, right, if I give you Rich Hill and maybe a hitter, can I get a slight hitter downgrade to get Madison Bumgarner, or a slight hitter upgrade to get Madison Bumgarner? Try and drive the price down on Madison Bumgarner in negotiations in a couple of months' time, because by then the person who drafted Madison Bumgarner, if they haven't gone heavy on pitcher like me and you talk about doing, they're going to be really short, because if they're then relying on somebody like your Sonny Grays, your Masahiro Tanakas to be their ace, if that's where they've gone with their second guy, that they're going to be really short, and they're going to be desperate for some upside pitching at that point. So that's your kind of target area. And you could make the same argument for Robbie Ray, James Paxton, Aaron Nola. If they've had 2 good months, try and flip them for Bumgarner.
Yeah, honestly, for me, I'm trying to trade for Bumgarner right now. I'm willing to
Yeah.
send Aaron Nola, Jose Quintana, Tanaka, Jake Arrieta. If I can send one of those guys to, hey, I'll give you a guy who will give you 2 months right now, and I want Bumgarner, knowing that I'm getting that value, and knowing I can work the waiver wire and find options that I like just as much. And especially, like we talk about, we tend to lean heavy pitching, so we can usually afford that early in the season. Like I would make that trade every day of the week, and I think you can find owners that would take Arrieta, that would take John Lester, that maybe Jose Barrios, and you make that straight swap, and you say, give me your guy, I'll give you mine, and we'll call it a day. The other guy on the Giants that we talked about is Mr. Jeff Samardzija. Torn pectoral. They're saying a month, probably a month and a half, 2 months before we see him on the mound. Is he a guy that you're still holding on to in most 10 and 12 team leagues?
Yeah, if it depends on DL spots, but I feel like most leagues have adjusted now to the point where they've gone from 2 DL spots to 3 or 4. So I think most teams have that DL spot. I'm going to drop him there, and I'm going to drop him onto the DL, and I'm going to hold on to him. If I need those DL spots, and he's not progressing well in a couple of weeks' time, I might look to drop him, because I think when he pitches, he will give you top 40 overall production, and I think that's consensusly where people have him ranked.
Yep.
And I still think the Giants are a good team, and I think when Bumgarner, Samardzija, and Cueto are on the hill, they're going to win a lot of games. So I think there's a good floor for all three of those guys, and therefore that's why I'm not panicking on them, because I think when they come back, I still think they can be good. Now, I am going to watch Samardzija when he starts to rehab to see how he's pitching, and it might be that I let him come off the DL and then I drop him because he's not doing very well. But yeah. I'm going to try and hold on to him until I see him back in major league action, because honestly, what are you going to find on the waiver wire right now that is going to be significantly better than Jeff Samardzija? And I mean, if you could find a way of flipping him for a pitcher like Alex Wood or Johnny Cueto in a multi-deal, as long as you're not giving up much at hitter, I like that. But I'm not flipping him to get Mike Clevenger. I'm not flipping him to get Cole Hamels. I'm not chasing Patrick Corbin. Okay, I like Patrick Corbin. I might end up moving him up and Taijuan Walker up because of the humidor. But I'm not chasing that Cole Hamels, Charlie Morton, J.A. Happ, Kenta Maeda group. I'm not going after them. So keep hold of Jeff Samardzija. If you don't trust any of the starting pitchers and you can use relief pitchers, go with that relief pitcher thing. There's a lot of good guys. Emilio Pagan is a name that I keep seeing everybody say is a good relief pitcher to stash because he'll have good strikeout rates. I'm keen on that tactic this year, especially in probably more in starts cap leagues than innings pick cap leagues. But I'm not going to start a rubbish starting pitcher for the sake of it when I could start a relief pitcher who will give me decent ratios.
Yeah, and it all depends on your league and your scoring and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm with you for the most part. If you're still drafting, Lance Lynn, Blake Snell, Cole Hamels, Taijuan Walker, any of Dylan Bundy or where's the other guy? Alex Cobb. Any of those guys stand out to you as guys you would take over Samardzija in drafts?
So if I'm looking at my rankings pre-Samardzija injury, and I had Samardzija 40th, just behind Fulmer and John Gray. Then I had Marcus Stroman, who I would now move above him. I had Danny Duffy, who I'd now move above him. Then I'd drop into another tier with Drew Pomeranz, Danny Salazar, Trevor Bauer, Garrett Richards, and Blake Snell. And honestly, and maybe Jameson Tyone, that's where I would draw the line. Those 6 guys, those 8 guys, so Stroman, Duffy, Pomeranz, Salazar, Bauer, Richards, Snell, and Tyone, because I just think on a per innings basis, those guys can be so good for you if they get it right. That's the way I would go. I feel like Stroman and Duffy are going to be your almost your Samardzijas, your innings warriors. But then I would be drawing the line at like Mike Clevenger, Cole Hamels, Charlie Morton. I'm not interested in those guys. The only guys I have ranked lower that I might take over Jeff Samardzija is, like I say, Taijuan Walker and Patrick Corbin, just to see what the humidor does.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, with the Giants having huge gaping holes in their starting rotation, Bartolo Colon was released by the Rangers. We got to pour one out for big fat Bartolo. I'm actually kind of hoping the Giants take a look at him, because our rotation is complete shit without Bumgarner, without Samardzija. But for fantasy purposes, Bartolo is probably not somebody you're going to be interested in unless he gets picked up and there's golden matchups. But for right now, I just wanted to throw him out there. Miguel Sano, he won't be suspended. For those of you that drafted him, congratulations. I guess, Ben, when we're talking about Miguel Sano's projections, the fact that he's not getting suspended, does that tweak your projections or your kind of thoughts on him overall?
It kind of doesn't. It moves him up a fraction in my rankings. So I'm just pulling up my third base rankings, and I had him right around the top 12. I had him sat at 11, but I had him down a tier below Travis Shaw. I'm very high on Eugenio Suarez and Adrian Beltre, so I had him just below those guys. But he now sits in that 4th tier with me, which I deem to be like Travis Shaw and Sano. I deem to be the real upside guys in there, and Sano probably jumps to 9 now for me, whereas I think Suarez and Beltre feel safer for me. I dropped Sano because I just thought, well, if he does miss, let's say, well, it's hard because also you didn't know what he was going to miss, because I'm sure it was Jeurys Familia had a domestic abusey type I don't want to trivialize it by calling it a domestic abusey type thing because that makes it sound really minor. But he
Yeah.
had something and only got 15 games, and I feel like for Sano, I feel like everyone was immediately saying, right, he's going to be suspended 50 plus games. Well, unfortunately, for some reason, the MLB think taking steroids is worse than harassing a woman, but or beating up your wife. So the MLB need to solve that problem. But
Yeah.
I never docked him that many because honestly, you look at Miguel Sano and he's only ever played 115 or 100, 114 to 116 games in his career. He averages 115 in his 2 full years in the majors. Um, I'm not going to now go and project him for 140 games. That seems crazy to me. Depth charts have him. If he plays 147 games, he is going to have every shot at being a top 5 third baseman because he could hit 40 home runs. He could get very close to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking we're looking at a guy that's going to play around 125, 130, which is where I had him projected.
Yep.
So there's no major jumps for me. I don't think you should all of a sudden be expecting 145, 150 games out of him. I really think 130 may be a ceiling. They have other options in that lineup. When Jorge Polanco comes back, then I want to say Escobar is going to become the utility guy. And I think if Sano's been playing regularly, chances are he'll have a little niggle. He's not the fittest of dudes. Like, there's a chance he's gonna get rested a bit in the second half of the season, especially if the Twins have got a shot at the playoffs. I think you'll see the Twins giving him the odd day off here and there. I think 140 games is probably a ceiling. 130 is a realistic expectation. So he hasn't moved that much for me.
Yeah, I'm thinking 125, 130, and it's funny to me that we're talking about the playoffs in Minnesota Twins before the season starts, but that's kind of the direction they're heading, so I'm with you. Let's talk about some messy closer situations, and we'll start in St. Louis. Luke Gregerson is going to begin the season on the 10-day DL. Dominic Leone, Tyler Lyons, Mike Matheny's basically saying it's going to be a kind of a committee approach. Bud Norris is there, who obviously had some success with the Angels last year. I guess if you're looking at potentially taking shots on this bullpen. Potentially thinking, okay, maybe I grab a guy now who could, be the guy. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe like a month in the season. Brett Cecil's there. Is there anybody there that's interesting to you, or are you just trying to avoid this situation like the plague?
I think I'd hoover up Luke Gregerson if he starts to drop in things, especially because you can stash him on the DL for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Dominic Leone, they traded for him, and to me that's important. The fact that in January they made the decision to go out and get him when I don't know if they would have known then that Gregerson was injured, but they obviously identified they needed to strengthen their bullpen, and they went out and got Dominic Leone. And now he's in for the closer role. If it was going to be Tyler Lyons or Brett Cecil, then I don't know why they would do that. I think what will probably happen is Leone and Tyler Lyons will split maybe because they do throw with opposite hands. So you might find if there never is an opportunity where it's benefits to have a lefty up in the 7th or 8th innings, that what you actually find is Brett Cecil handles that one opportunity. If that doesn't come up again, then they've got Bowman, Mayers, they've got all sorts of people that can get out, that can just give them good solid outs, and then they can pick between Lyons and Leone in the 8th and 9th. And I think it's going to be maddeningly inconsistent. Yeah, not exactly, but you get my point. And I just think when Gregerson comes back, you could be really disappointed. So I'm not investing too much in either of them at this point.
The one name I will throw out is Alex Reyes, a pitcher that I love his potential. I love his upside. And the Cardinals are notorious for using younger potential studs. They did this with Carlos Martinez in that role. And I think Alex Reyes actually is a guy that's on his way back. Obviously need to work up his innings. They don't want him to go crazy. But I could see them having, putting him in that role and him having 80 to 100 strong innings this year as a kind of precursor to being in the rotation next year. So if Alex Reyes is floating around, obviously if it's a dynasty or keeper league, he's probably gone. But if Alex Reyes is floating around and you have some flexibility, I think it's a name that makes a lot of sense to add and kind of see how everything goes. The other messy closer situation is in Texas. Obviously, Alex Claudio is the quote-unquote the guy. Matt Bush is there, Jake Diekman, Keone Kela. My boy Timmy Jim, Tim Lincecum's floating around. Once again, are you messing with the situation or are you avoiding it like the plague?
Oh, it's a horrible situation. It really is. It really got thrown into confusion with Matt Bush coming in. They sound like they want to use Claudio in high leverage situations, which I find kind of weird because he pitched 86 innings last year and only got 62 strikeouts. That doesn't strike you as the high leverage kind of guy, especially when you've got a bullpen with Jake Diekman, Keone Kayla, and Jose Leclerc, who all are good strikeout pitchers. It seems weird that then they would start talking about using Claudio in these high leverage situations, but maybe they just trust him a little bit more after he picked up 20 or after he picked up some sort of high innings areas last year. So isn't sorry, I'm reading projections for next year. I'm looking at the wrong numbers. I think it could be. I think it could be Lincecum. I really do. I think they might just give him a shot just
Yeah.
because they can, and if it means that then they can use like Leclerc, Kayla, Diekman, Bush, Claudio, to that rotation's really bad, and it's gone from being what was at one point being talked about a 6-man rotation to now being a 4-man rotation in projected things.
Dude,
With
let me just read you their 4-man rotation currently. This
no,
is what
don't
roster
please don't.
resets. Cole Hamels, Matt Moore, Doug Fister, Mike Minor.
Oh, it's going to be
What?
a miserable
There,
year.
it's like all fifth starters that are your second, third, and fourth. I mean, and Cole Hamels is not the old Cole Hamels. 3 lefty, like this, is just a mess of a team. Like obviously their bullpen has been a problem the past few years, but man, that is just ugly. Okay, so if we say we combine the Rangers and the Cardinals bullpens, who's your top option that you're stashing as a potential closer, and then who's number 2?
I'm going to stash Keone Kayla. I think the upside is there. And the other guy I'm gonna get is I'm gonna get Alex Claudio because I think when in the miracle situations that Hamels, Moore, Fister, or Minor deliver them in a situation where they can win games, then I think they're going to get sick of other people blowing it and they're going to just say, right, Claudio, we need you to pitch the 9th innings. We need you to lock these games down for us.
Yeah, for me, it's Alex Reyes, my number 1, and then probably Matt Bush. And take these with a grain of salt. These aren't guys you want to rely on. They're guys you want to be able to sit on and stash. And Lincecum's probably a 2B for me. I definitely think there's potential there. But I could also see him just being terrible for a month and being out of baseball again.
Do you know what
Uh,
upsets me the most when I look at this team is I look for relief somewhere in the pitching staff, and
mhm.
I look on the like you've got Jesse Chavez is the long reliever. I don't see him helping us. You've got oh God, let me just read you this group: Clayton Blackburn, Ronald Herrera, Joe Palumbo, and Martin Perez starting on the DL this year. I mean, Martin Perez has a lot of upside, and then you go down to the minor leagues, and okay, Yohander Mendez is good, but he didn't set the world on fire last year, and Edinson Volquez is there.
Yeah,
Like it
Edison
is,
Volquez and Chichi Gonzalez, dude. They're set. They're fine.
oh, it's so miserable, and honestly, if Bartolo Colon can be released because of this rabble, then Bartolo Colon's done, as far as
Yeah,
I'm concerned.
that's
Because,
true.
I mean, the Rangers are going to have to score 150 more runs than anyone else in the majors this year if they want to even get close to winning 80 games. I feel it's going to be horrific. It's one of these times where I'm really pleased that my baseball fandom originally came through fantasy baseball, so that
Mm.
like the Rangers were kind of a secondary thing. So the Rangers aren't the be all and end all of my happiness when it comes to baseball. My fantasy teams come first, the Rangers come second. Like anything the Rangers do when it gets to the postseason is just a bit of a fun bonus for me at the end of the year. Um, we had our fun.
Yeah. Well, as a Giants fan, we got 3 World Series, so
Oh,
I'm
screw off.
I'm pretty happy. But yeah, no, it's already obviously a horrible start to the season, and I'm expecting a 60-win season again. So I'll be nice and miserable, but I'll have my fantasy to fall back on. So let's talk about Week 1, Ben. Let's talk about a few things we're looking to kind of watch and see how it goes. And you had a guy that you were interested. Talk to me about him.
Lewis Brinson, and again, this comes from having followed him in the Rangers thing. He then went to Milwaukee, where I thought this might be a benefit to him because he's going into an even better hitting park. He really struggled. He's now been traded to the Marlins. I wrote when that happened that I thought it might be good for him. I wrote again that I thought he had a real chance to hit in the middle of the lineup. When I spoke about Cameron Maybin potentially leading off and what benefit that could be to you as a fantasy owner. Now they're talking about Lewis Brinson leading off for the Marlins. And the trouble is everybody looks at Lewis Brinson and just expects he's going to hit 20 home runs. And I'm not sure in that park that power is going to translate. So I'm going to set my aim a little lower there and say I think he hits maybe 10 to 15 home runs. But I really think leading off in a team that's going to need help generating runs, being a young player, I think there's a real chance he could steal 20 to 25 bases. And that is a real bonus. I think I'm hoping that what the Marlins are going to do is emphasize getting on base with him and not striking out is obviously key, but like putting the ball in play rather than swinging for the fences. I feel like with the Brewers and with the Rangers, he was brought up to try and hit home runs because that was their park. With the Marlins, I think it's going to be more about getting on base, letting Castro, oh God, there's no one else to talk about. Maybe Martin Prado, maybe Real Muto drive you in. That's kind of what I think they're going to have to do. Unfortunately, I think there will be some growing pains. I think there's going to be a situation where he's going to look at that lineup behind him and go, oh my God, if I don't hit this ball out the park, I'm never scoring a run in my life. And he'll try and hit it hard, but I think hopefully they can sort of work it. It's a decent sized ballpark there in terms of outfield, and we've seen people have success there as power hitters in the past, and they're willing to let guys run. So I really think Brinson is a guy that I'm going to watch this week, see how much he's at the top of the lineup. I'd actually prefer personally that he hit second or third and Maybin was at the top, because I think that optimizes for both of them. I think then Brinson can still steal 20 bases and hit 15 home runs, but I think all of a sudden you bring Maybin in as a 25-30 steal guy, whereas at the moment Maybin sits as a 15-20 steal guy hitting down at the bottom of the order. Yeah. So this is what I'm going to look at the Marlins lineup, because it's teams like this, the Marlins, I want to say the Padres, but I don't think anyone's sleeping on them anymore. But it's teams like the Marlins that people look at and think, God, they're awful. The Royals is another one. And
even Detroit, you know, these teams that, you know, you thought, oh, in the past they have really good lineups. Detroit's lineup gets ugly pretty quickly, but yeah, I'm with you. There could be value to be had on some of these quote unquote bad teams. Is Maybin worth holding on to at this point now that he's sitting, you know, 6th or 7th in the lineup?
I think I would, just because of steals potential. I think everyone is always short of steals. I would just stick him on your bench if you can, and I'd hold on to him if he starts rough. And there's every chance. I thought he was guaranteed to be a pretty much everyday player, but there's every chance if he starts rough that they just go and put him in the minor league system. Yeah. Well,
they still have Scott Vance like they could bring up, so they'll be fine.
And they've got some young guys too, so they might just decide to give young guys a go.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the Brewers, Brinson's old team. Obviously, the whole Ryan Braun potentially playing first, and Domingo Santana and Eric Thames is still there, so I'm curious to see kind of how that shakes out and how much Braun's in the outfield, how much Braun's at first base, what that does to Santana's kind of upside and potential, and obviously Lorenzo Cain and Yelich should play every single day or most days, so I'm really looking forward to that. The Cincinnati Reds, Ben, their outfield rotation, they have some interesting names out there. I'm curious to see how that kind of breaks and the Nixon-Zell situation. So talk to me about kind of your thoughts on where the Reds are.
So, yeah, just briefly touching on the Brewers, it sounds like Braun is going to start at first base against left-handed pitchers, and then he's going to move to the outfield. So Braun is scheduled to be the everyday guy, with Thames and Santana essentially platooning at first base. When Braun's at first base, Santana will be in the outfield, and when Braun's in the outfield, Thames will be at first base. That sounds like the plan. I do think that, let's not get excited, I do think playing at first base is going to improve Ryan Braun's health, but I don't think all of a sudden he's going to be 155, 160 games kind of guy. I think you're going to see them use that to find a way of getting Thames and Santana in the lineup from time to time. So I think it will be a net negative probably across the board, but the guy at the moment I want to own out of the three is Ryan Braun. The other two I'm really scared about owning, and we've got an auction tomorrow. I can tell you now I'm not going to bid on Domingo Santana because I just don't know what I'm going to get from him.
You were going to say you're going to for sure get Ryan Braun, because I could see that happening as well.
Yeah, I love Ryan Braun. I seem to have him in every league. I need to stop because when he busts, I'm going to be so disappointed, and you're all going to hear me just moan continuously. So going back to the Reds, their outfield rotation at the moment is four guys. You've got Schebler, you've got Duvall, you've got Billy Hamilton, and you've got Jesse Winker. Um, you've also got, as an outside bet, Jose Peraza can play the outfield. So if something did, two people were really bad, you could see Peraza shift out there to make room for Nick Senzel. But I'm interested to see what they do with Jesse Winker. When Jesse Winker's in the lineup, does he hit above Billy Hamilton? And if so, where does Billy Hamilton hit? Do they say, right, Billy Hamilton, you're not leading off, you hit second? Don't think, I think Billy Hamilton will be ninth,
Right now
which
they
is,
have, per roster resource anyways, they have Billy Hamilton leading off with Jesse Winker hitting two in front of Joey Votto. As someone who's invested in Jesse Winker in several leagues, I would love that to happen.
yeah, I'd actually prefer him at two. And that's the thing. It's the same situation that we discussed with
Lewis Brinson.
same. Yeah, Lewis Brinson, where actually hitting two would be a huge benefit to him because it would just balance out those runs and RBI a little bit. I and Winker's not a huge steals guy, so that's not something that I want to see. If anybody's going to hit at the top of the lineup to replace Billy Hamilton, I want it to be Jose Peraza because I always believe in Jose Peraza, but I don't see it happening. I do find it
I don't
interesting.
even hate Joey Votto hitting two and Winker hitting three. Votto's just so good at getting on base. Um, but
I mean, I don't care where Winker hits as long as he plays because he's better than Duvall and he's better than Schebler and he's better than Philip Irvin. So I just think that's what I want to see this week. Is it a true platoon between Winker and Duvall or Winker and Irvin and Schebler and yeah, you get where I'm going with that, or what's going to happen? Like, is that going to be a true platoon situation, or are they going to find a way of getting Winker in the lineup most days? And if so, does that end up affecting Billy Hamilton in the long run? Is there a situation where they do that, and then when you throw Nick Senzel in the situation, it gets even more complicated because if Billy Hamilton is very slow out of the gate, then by all means Jose Peraza could go out to centre field and Senzel go in at shortstop, and it's going to be messy because at the moment there's like seven guys or six guys for four spots, and somebody is going to end up being disappointed. At the moment, I don't think Senzel is owned enough in redraft to be a disappointed person. And I think Winker is the most underowned out of the lot. I think people are remembering what Duvall and Schebler have done and are drafting them. And I think people are really putting their money behind Hamilton because of the steals. I think any of those three could be disappointing. I think Winker's the guy, if he's on your waiver wire, to go out and get. And if you're in drafts this weekend and in an auction, he's going. There's 2 seconds left and he's going for $2. Go three because I think he will be really worth it.
Yeah, I don't think Billy Hamilton gets kicked out of this lineup unless he's traded, which the Giants need center fielder, so maybe they make a move for him, but we'll have to see about that. Let's talk a few pitchers that I think are interesting. There's two guys I'm really curious to see. Aaron Sanchez, who obviously 2 years ago before the blister issues was incredible and pitched really, really well and was like a dark horse Cy Young candidate type pitcher. If he's healthy and his hand is fine and he can avoid the blister issues that drug him down, he could be a really, really nice value. And then David Price, another guy that battled a ton of injuries and ineffectiveness a season ago, but is a guy who we know his upside, we know his potential, we know his talent. I'm very excited about both of these guys. I'm going to try and get a few, I'll get a few shares here, a few shares there of both of them. Let's talk about Zack Greinke, and we're going to talk about the humidor. So let's just kind of fold it all in, Ben. And I guess you're excited. Are you watching Greinke in terms of what his fastball looks like, how fast he's throwing? Because I know there's been some questions about his kind of speed this off season, the spring training. He hasn't really lived up to, like, he's been more like 89, 90 instead of like mid 90s. Do you have concerns about Greinke? And I guess let's roll that into the humidor after that.
I've got bigger concerns with Greinke about that little groin niggle he had, probably than because a groin niggle always sounds horrible for anybody. But I've got concerns for him about that, just in terms that he might be a bit slow off the start line. I really think that Zack Greinke is up there, and I believe he's a very intelligent guy. That's what I've been led to believe. I think he might be one of the most intelligent people in baseball because he just goes, it's spring training. Why would I throw 98 miles an hour? Or why would I throw as hard as I can in spring training and risk injuring myself when I can just ease myself in spring training? And I do feel like Zack Greinke kind of sandbags us all every year because Zack Greinke doesn't need to impress. There's no way Arizona are cutting Zack Greinke based on what he does in spring training. So I feel like he knows that, and I feel like he just does what makes him comfortable. And so I think the groin strain's probably nothing. I think Greinke just went, something doesn't feel right. can I come out? And they did. And the trouble is, he talks and he doesn't want to just say it's nothing, because I feel like Zack Greinke's a good dude, and I feel like he kind of respects people too much to just come out and say it's nothing when it might be something, and he's just honest and says it could be something, need to get it looked at, and that's what I'm watching him for. But yeah, I'm also watching that whole staff and that whole team for the humidor, and I'm just looking now, and we get Colorado in Arizona for the first 3 days, then we get the Dodgers so we get a day off, then we get the Dodgers. So we get 6 days to see how the humidor kind of affects things. And so it'll be really interesting to see not just Greinke, but Robbie Ray, Taijuan Walker, Patrick Corbin, and Zach Godley. If the humidor does what people think it could do, there is a real chance all 5 of those pitchers could end the season top 30 or top 40 if they stay healthy. I mean, it could be really interesting to see what kind of happens. And this week, I'm not sitting anybody because they're in Arizona, but it's going to be interesting to see for hitters whether or not you're going to have to start thinking about sitting people like, I don't know, your mid-range guys like your DJ LeMahieu's and stuff like that when they go to Arizona. Are they going to be affected that much by the humidor? That's what I'm going to be interested to see this week more than anything. It's gonna be interesting, and it's something definitely we're planning on writing between the two of us. Mostly, I think I'm gonna get it started, and you're just gonna add any thoughts you have. But we're gonna try and do some sort of like daily recap this year, as much as possible. And I can tell you now, in the first week, the humidor is gonna be featuring heavily, because it's going to be a thing I'm really watching. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be looking for highlights to see whether or not anybody's been talking about it and stuff like that, just to try and I'm going to be watching the games as much as possible to try and see what's happening. It's going to be a story that I think is going to unfold in this first week, and it's either going to be a thing in 2 weeks' time we're all going, what were we worried about, or oh my god, it's absolutely killing it. Like it's
Ben, we got breaking news. Chris Sale was pitching and just took a liner right back. It looked like, I can't tell if it went off his hip or off his knee, but he is down on the ground. He's getting taken out of the game. So when it rains, it pours. It looked like a hip pointer, or maybe a little bit lower than there, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so that's something to monitor. With drafts coming up, it'll be interesting. Hopefully it's nothing major, but I thought nothing major was coming of Madison Bumgarner, and he's out 2 months. So good times all around. Just the best times. Just the best.
Yeah. I do wonder in spring training whether or not it's an overreaction, but whether or not they should pitch behind a screen just for the sake of it. Like it's silly that they're getting hit by comebackers, but I suppose
they're not working on like their reaction, and then when
they've got to get
starts,
used to it, haven't they?
Issues.
So
I don't know.
it's just bad luck, and it's partly my fault, and you can all blame me because I wrote in my article it doesn't feel like there's been many injuries this year, and now since then we've had 3 injuries for starting pitchers, so you can all blame me.
Yep, it's all your fault, Ben.
So it always is. That's what my wife says, anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's usually the case. So Aaron Nola, James Paxton, and Castillo. These are all kind of lumped into a group, and I think they're all interesting. Definitely guys that I'm watching. I assume you're on board with watching these 3 guys this week as well.
Yeah, high upside guys. If they start the season well, then I think there's going to be a lot of very happy people. But they're also a group that if they start slowly, I think people will sour on really quickly, especially Paxton with his injury history and Castillo with his lack of production in the past. I think that, and there's more names to this. Robbie Ray is another guy. If he does start slowly and the humidor doesn't seem to be doing well, Zack Godley's another guy, then you could very quickly find these guys on either, not on waiver wise. I don't think people drop them, but I think you could get them at a discount in trades. So this is a group I'm watching just to see whether or not, if they start slow, they're worth a little inquiry to the owner, just saying, "Oh, it sucks, doesn't it? How would you like my safe guy now?"
Yeah. Well, I'm really curious, just to watch all these Diamondbacks games kind of in general, because I want to see. Obviously, it's going to take a couple seasons to have a better full version of kind of what the humidor effect is going to be, but I do want to see, maybe if the humidor doesn't seem like it's doing anything and they're still crushing, if you can get Zach Godley or Robbie Ray on a super cheap discount because people are overreacting, or if it looks like they're doing really well, and then maybe you can trade for Goldschmidt or Jake Lamb or something. Yeah, and then we did talk two start, but we will talk two start options each and every week here on the show. But it's the you got to start your studs. That's all you got to do. As of right now, I wouldn't go overreacting to make sure you get somebody in your lineup just because they have a quote unquote two start this week. So Ben, I want to have a little fun as we look to end the show and talk some predictions. Baseball season will be here before our next show. So let's talk World Series. Let's talk MVP. Let's talk Cy Young. So let's start with the World Series prediction, Ben. Give me the two teams that will be playing and who is your winner?
I think it's going to be the Astros versus the Nationals. I think the Astros are just the most complete team in the AL, and I think the Nationals, this is it for them. I don't think Bryce Harper's staying. I might be wrong, but I think this is it for them. I think they go all in. I think they make deals. I think they really chase it. However, I think the Astros go back to back. I really do. I love that young group of players.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that, and with Verlander locking it down and the bullpen and the young studs they have, if they do what the Giants did, where they win 3 in 5 years like that, or 3 in 4 years, I would not be shocked one bit. That is not my World Series, and actually I don't have either of those teams in my World Series. I have the Chicago Cubs coming back and beating the Boston Red Sox in the World Series. I think adding Yu Darvish, and obviously they had Quintana, who they added late last year, to go with Kyle Hendricks, to go with John Lester. Obviously studs Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant. I think Addison Russell takes a step forward. I think Javier Baez is going to be solid. I think the Cubs win another World Series this year, and that will lead into our AL and NL MVP picks. And I'll start. I'm going Mookie Betts. Obviously, I have the Red Sox in the World Series. I picked a really good player from one of the better teams, because that's kind of typically how it works. And Betts struggled a little bit last year. I expect him to bounce back. If this is JD Martinez instead of Mookie Betts, I would not be shocked at all. But I think Betts could have a huge home run steals type season, really good average. Obviously, great defense in the field. I think he could take home some hardware.
Yeah, I have to say that if the Astros aren't the team that make the World Series, I will be more than happy if it's a Red Sox Yankees playoff to make the World Series. That will be a lot of fun, and it'll be that is a good rivalry, Red Sox Yankees. I know it's a bit tedious, but I from the UK, and with them being on the East Coast, and there's a lot of Yankees and Red Sox fans here, I do enjoy following Yankees Red Sox, and I'd love to see them two go head to head for a chance to go and face either the Nationals or the Cubs in the World Series. I think that would be a great story, and I think. I think the two cursed franchises of the Cubs versus Red Sox is a great call, Kyle. I really do. AL MVP, I've gone for the obvious. I've said initially Mike Trout, but if the Angels season falls apart and it is the Astros that go, I think Carlos Correa comes out over Jose Altuve. I think Correa just takes that next step. I think Altuve is still who Altuve is. But I just think Correa is going to be the guy that really the media focus on, and I think he takes home the AL MVP. And as I went Nationals in the World Series, I've gone for Bryce Harper as the NL MVP. And honestly, I think it's funny to say he deserves it because he's had so much acclaim, but he's such a good player. It would be so nice to see him get his kind of swan song in Washington. And if they do win the World Series, I actually kind of hope he just leaves, because that's the perfect way to go.
Yeah, as long as he comes to San Francisco, he'll look great in black and orange.
Not happy.
We'll see. So my NL MVP, I'm going to stay with my Cubs Red Sox theme. And, I'm going to take Anthony Rizzo. I think this is a guy that is going to do a lot. Obviously, a great clubhouse leader, but I think he has the power. I think he's going to have a good average. Chris Bryant would be, maybe a little more common pick, but I wanted to go off the radar just a little bit. And I think Rizzo is talented enough where he could have a monster season and win the NL MVP as the Cubs are on their way to the World Series. Now let's talk Cy Young. And Ben, I don't know if I'm going to have to change this. Well, I might have to make a update.
I'll give you a second pick
on our next pick. So I, before the injury, picked Chris Sale because, sure. So it may not have been your fault. It may have been my fault. I picked Chris Sale. And here we are. So if Chris Sale's out and he's injured for a long time, I'm going to throw Chris Archer out there. I'm always going to be a Chris Archer guy. I don't know if he can actually win. But if he takes the step forward, the potential is definitely there for him to have an incredible season and win Cy Young. But hopefully Sale's fine and he could be okay. Talk to me about your AL Cy Young pitcher.
So I thought Verlander was my initial thought, and then I kind of went, he's aging. The Astros we've got such a deep rotation of arms, and they can just do bullpen days that I think Verlander might get skipped later on as the season goes, and might even end up on the 10-day ADL with a broken fingernail. They're really painful, by the way. So my wife says anyway. I've never had one. Don't have long enough fingernails. I've decided to go Corey Kluber. I've gone boring, the same as you kind of did with Chris Sale. We've kind of gone for the best two pitchers in the AL. I think Cleveland win that division. I think Kluber's great. I think he's no, don't say it. I was going to say I think he's an Iron Man. Touch wood. Might as well. Caveat that now that he's probably going to get hit by something like, I don't know, like a flying UFO tonight or something stupid. I think he's going to be really good. And on the NL side, I'm going to look at the fact that Max Scherzer and I blanked on his name, Clayton Kershaw, have had a few injuries lately. And I'm going to go for the sandbagger, Zack Greinke, to be absolutely great, pitch with the humidor, and just, I don't know. I don't think he'll repeat what he did in Los Angeles a few years ago, but would anyone be shocked if he had a 2.25 ERA? And even if the strikeouts aren't there, I think he could win 15 to 20 games this year. I really do think that.
Yeah, man, I feel like you'd have to do what he did in LA to be in that conversation. But I could see it. I just, the way Kershaw's been all spring, I find it hard to pick someone else, but I do want to pick someone else just because, we both should probably say Mike Trout for AL. We should probably both say, Clayton Kershaw for NL Cy Young. But if we want to have a little fun, let's get a little crazy. So I'm going to go Yu Darvish. I've been a big proponent of Darvish. I think he is set up to have an incredible season. I think he's fully healthy from his injuries from the past couple seasons. He started to make his progress last year. Obviously, I love the Cubs this year. I think they're going to win the World Series. So Yu Darvish, NL Cy Young Award winner.
I like it. And that Texas rotation could really use him right about now.
Yeah, and I think Minnesota is going to be kicking themselves for settling with Lynn, and maybe it wasn't really their fault, but they could have seen. I don't know. So, anyways, Ben, this was a lot of fun. It was good to catch up. It was good to talk fantasy baseball week 1. When we're back next week, we'll be recapping. I guess 4 days, 3 days, depending on how it is. So it'll still be technically week 1. We'll give you some initial reactions, and then we'll start talking about options that you can look to for week 2. So for Ben Rolfe, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.